Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Geek Boulevard Weekly. I am your host, Steve, on camera for the very first time. I love movies and I love video games. Before we get started, just to let you know, make sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Tick the bell and get notified whenever I drop new videos. That being said, let's get into it. We got some juicy stories that we need to cover. So our first story of today is Sony looking to cut down the amount of live service titles by half within the next few years. Just for context, before CEO Jim Ryan announced his retirement, he made the decision for Sony to release at least 12 live service games, which just seemed crazy to think about. And honestly, I had no faith in that plan whatsoever because it's very difficult to maintain and keep players engaged, and Sony has more of a reputation in creating immersive single player experiences. I think it's great that they're trying to branch out and do something different and increase their revenue stream, but I just felt at the time that it was just going to crash and burn on them. Well, according to interim CEO Hiroki Totoki, who is helping Jim Ryan to transition out of his CEO role, went on record to say that they plan to release only 6 live service titles while pushing back the other 6. He goes on to state, "We are reviewing this. We have not been able to meet the gamers' expectations, but we are trying as much as possible that this would be played by the gamers and liked by gamers for a long time." So 6 titles will be released by fiscal year 25. That's our current plan, and the remaining 6 titles, as for when to be released, we are still working on that. Now, it's definitely possible those remaining 6 titles will come out, but I feel strongly that they will most likely just be canceled. I mean, the market is just flooded enough already with live service titles, and even the good ones are struggling right now. Look at Bungie, who Sony acquired to help push this initiative with their other studios, laid off about 8% of its staff. And live service is a tough market to be successful in because there's only so much time in a day, and these games are designed to keep you playing, so that needs to be offset by great content. Naughty Dog, who was working for years on The Last of Us Factions standalone game, was forced to put that title on hold as the content they were making, according to Bungie, just wasn't sustainable long term. And I think Sony is making the right move in being honest and forthcoming about this type of news and trying to focus on the quality to make these games great instead of just focusing on the dollar signs. Moving on to Marvel Studios, as it shifts its release dates for a number of projects in the wake of the end of the SAG-AFTRA strike. Deadpool 3 was originally set to release May 3rd of 2024, but will now take the July 26th, 2024 date from Captain America 4. That 4 is now being pushed to February 14th, 2025. Thunderbolts has now been pushed from December 20th, 2024 to July 25th, 2025. And Blade has been pushed all the way to November 7th of that year as well. So to clarify, Deadpool 3 is the only MCU movie to release in 2024. That may come as a shock to some, but let me be clear in stating that there are still a lot of things coming from Marvel Studios that are slated for next year, such as the Echo series, which is coming out in January, X-Men 97, which is slated for sometime in early 2024, I believe. The Agatha spin-off is on its way in the fall of next year, Spider-Man freshman year, as well as the Marvel Zombies spin-off. So not to mention the various Sony Marvel projects like Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter. So Marvel nuts like myself won't be so starved for content. I just hope that it's quality content. Moving on to Warner Brothers, as they see money signs in live service games and decide to double down on it. In their Q3 earnings call, CEO David Zaslav stated, quote, "Our focus is on transforming our biggest franchises from largely console and PC based with 3-4-year release schedules to include more always online gameplay through live services, multi-platform and free-to-play extensions, with the goal to have more players spending more time on more platforms." Now, reading that, it immediately sent red flags up, and I'm sure it did for others as well. I'm not a live service player or really a multiplayer kind of gamer at all. I'm all about the single player experience. I always have been for quite some time. I mean, I played Call of Duty with friends years ago, but then I just kind of dropped off and never went back. To see that Warner Brothers is not learning from its mistakes is quite shocking, honestly. Look at Middle-earth: Shadow of War, a sequel to Shadow of Mordor, which is a phenomenal single-player game set in the Middle-earth universe, in the Lord of the Rings universe. It was a fantastic game, so good. And then they announced the sequel, and people were excited initially. But instead of making a great sequel, Warner Brothers decided to include a bunch of microtransactions that forced players to purchase said items to reach the true ending of the game, or otherwise be forced to grind multiple hours. And fans hated it. Monolith Studios tried to fix the problem and remove those features, but the damage was pretty much done at that point. Monolith is currently working on a Wonder Woman game, which I was excited for, but now I'm worried there's gonna be a battle pass and XP boosts and a mediocre story because the focus is to waste your time and money. I mean, look at the success of Hogwarts Legacy. I was excited for it, but there was a bit of skepticism, and when the game released, it was a huge success. It blew people away, selling 12 million copies and generating revenue of over $800 million. A single-player open-world RPG set in the wizarding world. If that doesn't scream success, then I don't know what does. They're very confident about this plan, as games like Mortal Kombat 1, which has live service features, sold at least 3 million copies when it launched in September. So I can see why they would want to push further into that space, but to make your largest franchises into live service money grabber time wasters is just not the way to go, my guy. It's just not. To solidify this further, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League is the next big title from Rocksteady Studios, the makers of the immensely fantastic Arkham trilogy. This is their first game in 8 years, and it's a live service title. The game was delayed twice and is now set to release February of next year. A 4-player third-person looter shooter with all the bells and whistles like gun skins, costumes, XP boosts, blah blah fucking blah. I really feel for the developers at Rocksteady who were clearly forced into this choice by Warner Brothers, and you know, that's probably why the founders of Rocksteady were basically like, nah fam, we out. I don't see this plan working whatsoever, and it will likely blow up in Warner Brothers' face, and I hope it does. Moving on, as James Gunn says his upcoming Superman film is still on track for 2025, despite the strikes delaying a lot of productions. He stated on Threads that, quote, "Thanks to the efforts of our talented crew who never lost faith during the longest strikes in Hollywood history and who never let their foot off the pedal, continuing to barrel forward, creating the most amazing character and set designs I've seen in my entire career, Superman Legacy will be making the originally planned release date of July 11th, 2025. This is a bold move to stick to the originally planned release date, but it also seems that things are further along than we thought, as production is expected to start March of next year, so that's exciting to see. This is gonna be a tough nut to crack though, as not only is this a different type of character tone-wise compared to work that James Gunn has done before, this is also the first film of the DCU and will set the path going forward. Technically, it starts with Creature Commandos, the animated series that's premiering on Max, but this will be the first film in that universe. If this film does not hit with audiences right out of the gate, it could spell trouble for a WB, so fingers crossed that it's a success. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 sells 5 million copies in just 11 days. According to Game Informer, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 even outsold Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which sold 4.3 million copies in 2 weeks. That's hard to believe, honestly, as Mario just prints money and always sells like hotcakes. The game has been getting fantastic reviews across the board with a score of 90 on Metacritic. I've had to stop playing it for a bit as I've been very busy, but the early hours that I've played have made me think it's easily my game of the year so far, so I'm excited and hungry to get back to it as soon as I possibly can. And finally, the first trailer for the newest chapter in the Ghostbusters franchise, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, is out, and I'm just loving this trailer. I was very excited when Afterlife came out and put a big smile on my face, and it was a welcome return to form for the franchise, even though it was basically a rehash of the first Ghostbusters movie. This looks like a different direction that they're taking the franchise in. It's not being directed by Jason Reitman this time around. Instead, the film is being directed by Gil Keenan, who wrote Afterlife, and is set to release March 29th, 2024. And that is everything I have on episode 2 of Geek Boulevard Weekly. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned as my review for The Killer will be dropping on Wednesday. My review for The Marvels will be delayed a bit as there was a bit of a family emergency that needed to be attended to, so I can't really make it to the theater this week, but I will post my review for that sometime before the next Geek Boulevard Weekly episode drops. So until next time, folks, keep it classy and keep it geeky.